Pennywise's true form, the Deadlights. In the It movies, Pennywise the dancing clown isn't actually a clown at all. According to both Stephen King's novel and evidence throughout the films, the clown is just one form taken by an ancient cosmic entity whose true appearance exists as orange lights that float in a void outside normal reality. These are the Deadlights. In It, Chapter 2, when Beverly encounters them as a child, she sees swirling orange energy that seems to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The theory suggests that what we call Pennywise is merely a hunting costume, a shape designed to lure and terrify, while the Deadlights represent the creature's actual form. This explains why defeating the clown body isn't enough. The entity exists on a level beyond physical reality, which is why the losers must confront not just the manifestation, but the cosmic horror behind it. The Deadlights can consume minds, trap souls, and exist across time simultaneously, suggesting It is less a monster and more a force of nature from beyond our universe. Georgie's survival. Georgie Denbrough might not have died in the sewer. This theory emerged because of specific moments in both films where Georgie appears to Bill in ways that feel different from other Pennywise manifestations. During the flooded basement scene in the first movie, Georgie reaches toward Bill with his arm intact, then suddenly it's torn and bleeding. Supporters argue this switch indicates Pennywise is manipulating a real Georgie who's been kept alive in some form. In It, Chapter 2, when Bill enters the sewer and finds Georgie, the boy speaks with unusual clarity and emotional depth for a Pennywise puppet. The theory suggests It keeps victims in a state between life and death, feeding on their fear over years rather than killing them instantly. This would explain the missing children's extended absences and the way certain manifestations seem to retain genuine personality traits. If true, it means Bill's final confrontation with his brother was even more tragic because Georgie was aware and suffering the entire time. Richie's secret. Richie Tozier's sexuality was allegedly hinted at throughout the entire first film. Years before, It Chapter 2 explicitly revealed his feelings for Eddie. Fans who support this theory point to how Richie constantly uses humor as a shield, particularly when emotions run high. In the arcade scene, Richie plays a game while the other losers discuss their fears, physically distancing himself from emotional vulnerability. During moments when Eddie is in danger, Richie's reactions are consistently the most visceral and panicked. The theory also highlights how Richie never shows romantic interest in Beverly, despite other boys clearly having crushes on her, and how his jokes often deflect from personal questions. His voices and personas serve as masks to hide his true self. When rewatched with this context, nearly every Richie scene takes on additional meaning. His terror when Eddie is injured in the Neibolt house, his reluctance to leave Derry as an adult, and his specific carving on the kissing bridge all allegedly were breadcrumbs, leading to Chapter 2's revelation that he'd been in love with Eddie since childhood. The Turtle Connection. Maturin the Turtle exists in the It universe, and fans believe they've spotted evidence of this cosmic entity throughout both films. In Stephen King's novel, the turtle is an ancient being who vomited up our universe and serves as a counterbalance to its destructive force. The theory points to several possible references in the movies. In the first film, turtle imagery appears in Ben's room and in background details throughout Derry. During the cistern confrontation in It, Chapter 2, some viewers claim to see turtle shell patterns in the lighting and set design. This connects to King's larger Dark Tower mythology, where the turtle is one of the guardians of the beam, cosmic entities holding reality together. If Maturin exists in the film universe, it would explain how the losers possess the power to fight It at all, suggesting they're unknowingly channeled or protected by this benevolent cosmic force. The absence of explicit turtle references might be intentional misdirection, with the entity working subtly in the background while it operates overtly through fear and violence. Stanley's real reason. Stanley Uris didn't kill himself just because he was too afraid to face Pennywise again. This darker theory suggests Stan understood something the other losers didn't, that their attempt to defeat It would fail and result in all their deaths. When Mike calls the losers home, Stan receives information, possibly a vision or intuitive understanding of what's coming. The theory proposes that Stan saw multiple futures or understood the true cost of the ritual of Chud and realized that one of them needed to die before the confrontation for the others to have any chance of survival. His death wasn't cowardice, but sacrifice, a calculated decision to change the outcome. In the bathroom, he writes "it" in his own blood, which supporters interpret not as a message of fear, but as a clue or warning. Some versions of this theory suggest Stan's death actually weakened Pennywise by denying It the fear it expected to harvest from him, throwing off the entity's calculations. Others believe Stan's Jewish faith gave him insight into cosmic forces the others lacked, and he chose martyrdom to protect his friends. Either interpretation transforms Stan from the weakest loser into potentially the bravest. Bill's guilt. Bill Denborough's stutter isn't just a character quirk, but a physical manifestation of survivor's guilt and self-hatred. The theory examines how Bill's speech impediment worsens when he's anxious or discussing Georgie, and how it completely disappears when he's writing or in moments of confidence. As a child, Bill made the paper boat that led Georgie into the street on a rainy day, and he stayed home sick rather than going out with his brother. Every stutter represents Bill's subconscious punishing himself for surviving when Georgie didn't. In It, Chapter 2, adult Bill has largely overcome his stutter through success as a writer, but it returns the moment he's back in Derry facing his guilt. The theory connects this to Bill's power against It, suggesting that his voice, his words, literally have power when he believes in them. His writer's imagination and his ability to shape narrative make him the leader and the one who ultimately declares "you're just a clown" to diminish its power. His stutter is both his greatest weakness and the key to understanding how belief and self-perception shape reality in Derry. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I create videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help me out. The ritual origin. The ritual of Chud failed in It, Chapter 2, because Mike Hanlon either misunderstood it or lied about how it works. In the movie, Mike tells the losers to collect artifacts from their past and burn them to complete the ritual, claiming he learned this from studying Derry's history and indigenous peoples. The theory argues this was never a real ritual at all, or Mike deliberately gave them false information. Evidence includes how quickly the ritual fails, Pennywise's mocking laughter when they attempt it, and Mike's later admission that the Shokapiwa tribe who supposedly performed it were actually all killed by it. Some fans believe Mike invented the ritual entirely, desperate to bring his friends home and knowing they'd need something concrete to believe in. Others think the real ritual of Chud from the novel, involving a metaphysical battle of wills and imagination, was too abstract for Mike to explain or for the losers to perform. The artifacts themselves might have had power, but not because of any ritual, rather because they represented genuine belief and connection. This theory reframes the entire second act of It, Chapter 2, as the losers clinging to false hope while the real battle was always going to be psychological. Beverly's vision, meaning. Beverly Marsh saw something specific when she looked into the Deadlights as a child, and different theories interpret her vision in radically different ways. In the first film, Bev floats among the Deadlights and sees flashes of the future, including the losers reuniting as adults and their confrontation with Pennywise. The most common theories suggest she saw every possible timeline simultaneously, understanding in that moment that their childhood battle wouldn't be the end. This explains her strange calmness afterward and her cryptic statements about the end, and we all come back. A darker interpretation proposes that Bev saw all the ways they could die, including her own death, and the trauma of this knowledge stayed buried in her subconscious. Some fans argue she saw something even worse, perhaps the true nature of it or the Deadlights' ultimate purpose. Information so horrifying, her mind suppressed it entirely. The theory also examines why Beverly was able to escape the Deadlights when others who see them are consumed. Perhaps her specific trauma, her history of abuse and survival, gave her a tolerance for horror that others lacked, or maybe the Deadlights chose to release her as part of its larger game with the losers. Mike's manipulation. Mike Hanlon manipulated and lied to his friends throughout It Chapter 2, making him a morally questionable character despite being positioned as the hero. Unlike the other losers who left Derry and forgot, Mike stayed and became obsessed with defeating It, spending 27 years preparing for its return. The theory argues that Mike's isolation drove him to extremes, and he withheld critical information to ensure his friends would come back and fight. He lied about the ritual of Chud, admitting only after it failed that the tribe who performed it was slaughtered. He drugged Bill with vision-inducing substances without consent to show him the past. He kept his father's tragic history and his own trauma hidden, using his friend's guilt rather than being honest about the slim chances of success. Some versions of this theory suggest Mike knew people would die, but considered it acceptable collateral damage to destroy it. His decision to stay in Derry could be viewed as noble sacrifice or as obsessive madness that cost Eddie and Stanley their lives. The film never fully addresses Mike's deceptions, leaving his character in moral gray space where his methods are questionable even if his goals were pure. The balloons explained. The red balloons don't just signal Pennywise's presence, but serve a specific function in how its power operates. Throughout both films, balloons appear before attacks, but not everyone can see them. The theory proposes that the balloons are visible only to those whose fear it is currently feeding on or targeting, acting as a marker of psychic connection between the entity and its victims. In several scenes, adults walk past balloons without reacting, while children or the losers see them clearly. This supports the idea that it exists partially in a perceptual reality shaped by fear and belief. The balloons might be how Pennywise marks territory or tracks potential victims, floating through Derry as extensions of its awareness. Their bright red color represents blood, childhood, and danger simultaneously, triggering instinctive fear responses. Some fans suggest the balloons are actually fragments of its consciousness, explaining how the entity seems to be in multiple places at once. When a balloon appears, it is present in some form, watching and feeding on the fear it generates even before revealing itself. Derry's complicity. The town of Derry itself is complicit in its existence, with the adults willfully ignoring the disappearances and violence because they're psychically influenced by the entity. This theory examines how Derry has an abnormally high rate of tragedy, including the Bradley Gang shootout, the Kitchener Ironworks explosion, and the Black Spot fire, all occurring in 27-year cycles, matching its awakening. The adults in Derry display strange behavior, from the pharmacist who ignores Beverly's obvious abuse injuries to the police who barely investigate missing children. Rather than simple neglect, the theory suggests it psychically suppresses the adult's concern and memory, feeding on the ambient fear and suffering in the town while keeping itself protected. Derry might be built on a thin spot in reality where it originally arrived, and the town's continued existence depends on a parasitic relationship with the entity. The cycle of violence in Derry, including the homophobia that leads to Adrian Mellon's death, could be it amplifying humanity's worst impulses to create more fear to feed on. This makes every citizen of Derry partially responsible, unknowingly sustaining the monster through their apathy and cruelty. Ben's transformation. Ben Hanscom's dramatic physical transformation between the films represents more than just weight loss and growing up. The theory examines how Ben's obesity as a child was armor, a physical manifestation of trying to make himself small and invisible to avoid his abusive father and bullies. His weight was protective shame, internalized from trauma. As an adult, Ben became an architect, someone who designed structures and safe spaces, suggesting his entire career is about creating the protection he never had. His physical fitness and attractiveness as an adult represent overcompensation, building a new exterior self to hide the scared child within. The theory connects this to how memory works in the film. The losers forget Derry when they leave, but their trauma shapes them anyway through careers, relationships, and coping mechanisms. Ben's transformation is his subconscious mind trying to become someone his childhood self would have felt safe with. When he returns to Derry and reunites with Beverly, his old feelings resurface instantly, showing that despite the physical changes, emotionally, he's still the boy writing love poems. His character arc suggests that we carry our childhood selves forever, no matter how much we change externally. Eddie's mother theory. Sonia Kasprak knew more about it and Derry's darkness than she revealed, and her overprotection of Eddie was a twisted attempt to keep him safe. This controversial theory examines how Eddie's mother went beyond normal anxiety into extreme control, convincing him he had asthma and countless other illnesses he didn't have, keeping him dependent and afraid to leave the house. Rather than simple Munchausen syndrome by proxy, some fans believe Sonia had her own traumatic experience with it or Derry's cycle of violence, possibly even losing someone in a previous awakening. Her obsessive need to control Eddie and keep him sick mirrors how Pennywise operates, using fear to trap victims. The theory suggests Eddie's mother was unknowingly doing its work, ensuring her son remained frightened and vulnerable, exactly the kind of prey the entity prefers. The parallel between Sonia's manipulative love and its predatory attention is striking. Both use fear as control, both isolate Eddie from the world, and both position themselves as protectors while actually being threats. When Eddie breaks free from his mother to rejoin the losers, he's not just rebelling against parental control, but breaking a cycle of fear that made him vulnerable to it in the first place. The 27 years. Pennywise operates on a 27-year cycle for specific mathematical, symbolic, and possibly cosmic reasons that fans have analyzed extensively. 27 is 3 cubed, a number with significance in numerology and mysticism, representing completion of a spiritual cycle. In astrology, Saturn takes approximately 29 years to orbit the Sun, and the Saturn return, occurring around age 27 to 30, is traditionally when people face major life reckonings. This connects to the losers being children during one cycle, and adults forced to confront their past in the next. The theory also examines how 27 years represents roughly a generation, long enough for children to become parents, and for the town to partially forget previous tragedies. Its hibernation cycle might be tied to how long it takes for fear to ripen or for new prey to reach optimal psychological vulnerability. Some fans connect the number to lunar cycles, multiplication of sacred numbers, or patterns in other Stephen King works. The precise 27-year pattern also suggests it operates according to rules or restrictions, cosmic laws that even this entity must follow. This implies it isn't all-powerful, but bound by the nature of the universe it exists in, giving the losers potential weaknesses to exploit. Patrick Hochstetter's fate. Patrick Hochstetter's death scene reveals something crucial about how Pennywise chooses and consumes victims differently based on their psychology. In the first film, Patrick is lured by the sight of a zombie that seems to match his specific interests. The book version of Patrick is a sociopath who killed his baby brother and keeps a refrigerator full of dying animals, suggesting he lacks normal fear responses. The theory proposes that it struggled to scare Patrick in conventional ways because his psychology was already twisted, so Pennywise had to approach him differently, perhaps with curiosity, or promise violence rather than pure fear. Patrick's fate, attacked by a swarm of creatures from the refrigerator, represents it, adapting its method to match this unusual victim. This suggests Pennywise has sophisticated understanding of human psychology and adjusts its hunting style accordingly. For normal children, it uses classic fears. For someone like Patrick, who's already broken, it might have to use different bait entirely. Some fans believe Patrick's death was quicker and less theatrical because it found him less satisfying to feed on, or alternatively, that Patrick's darkness made him especially delicious to the entity. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing so you catch every video I make. Thanks for watching.